The installation of a Conrete Mat Xpress requires few material and tools. Here's what you'll need. You will need mats, thermostats, and thermal probes as mentioned in the quote. You will also need elbows to pass the cold lead from the slab to the interior of the wall. A steel mesh is always necessary to secure the elbow, tie wraps to secure the elbow to the mesh, and tape such as duct tape or tuck tape to secure the end of the probe's conduit at the center of the slab. To introduce the probe inside the conduit, a lubricant may be necessary when it's hot outside. Electrical tape is required to wrap and protect the identification label attached to the cold lead. If the mat is installed under a concrete topping, staples will be needed for the stapler. Hot glue can also be used, and anchors from electric cables can be used to secure the cold lead. A styrofoam block or a brick will be needed to secure the probe 2 inches away from the finished floor. Few tools are required. Obviously, tools to conduct tests such as an ohm meter or mega ohm meter are required. You will need scissors to cut the fiberglass mat. Try to remember to have lighter fluid on hand to clean the scissors from time to time, since the glue from the mat tends to stick to them. Having a measuring tape goes without saying. In the case of an installation under a concrete topping, make sure you have an adequate stapler to staple the cable or the mat to the plywood. You will need safety glasses and gloves. Since the mat is made of fiberglass, it can irritate the skin. Avoid touching it with your bare hands. And finally, make sure to have a hammer to secure the anchors of the cold lead to the plywood or OSB subfloor. Obviously, we have to follow some guidelines when installing a mat to ensure your client's safety and comfort. Installation rules for the Conrete Mat Xpress are similar to the rules for the surface-type cables, but there are some differences. Whether they are installed under a topping or a slab, heating cables must be installed at least 2 inches away from the walls. With a topping, the cable must be 2 inches away from toe kicks. The same goes for the 1-inch distance away from fixed objects. This rule applies in the case of an installation under a topping, but does not apply in the case of an installation under a slab, since mats installed under a slab can run under fixed objects. Regardless of how the mat is installed, it must always be installed at least 6 inches away from a toilet drain, 8 inches away from another heating system, 1/2 inch from any combustible surface. The minimum bending radius is 1 3/4 inch. To give you a better idea, the bending radius of the cable laid on the mat is 3 inches. If removed from the mat, cable runs must never exceed 10 feet. The heating cable must never be crossed, cut, shortened, or modified in any way. Even if we end up further away from the floor covering when using a concrete mat as opposed to a surface-type cable, it is necessary to maintain an even spacing between cable runs. Otherwise, the client will end up with colder and warmer zones. The heating cables, as well as the cold lead joint and the end of cable, must be completely covered with concrete. In case of an installation under a concrete topping, like we said before, the mat can never run under fixed objects. Never cross an expansion joint. The heating cable must never be installed under a wall, in a wall, or on a wall. Every room closed by a door must have its own thermostat. The minimum installation temperature required for the mat is -10 degrees Celsius, 14 degrees Fahrenheit. If the mat is exposed to colder weather, wait until it has reached a temperature of at least -10 Celsius or 14 Fahrenheit before handling it. Keep the identification label attached to the cold lead in place. Protect the cold lead from bad weather. Make sure that water cannot infiltrate the system through the extremity of the cold lead. Otherwise, this could cause a leakage at the mechanical joint. Monolithic slabs are particular. They are concrete slabs that constitute a floor and a foundation all in one concrete pour. Mats should not be installed at the bottom of the perimeter foundation. The maximum quantity of concrete that can cover a mat is 6 inches. In such a situation, the best thing to do is to install a green cable concrete over a mesh 2 inches away from the finished concrete. Cables installed at the perimeter must be controlled by their own thermostat, since the thickness of the concrete in this place will require the cable to heat more often, particularly during startup.